Welcome to the CEO Crowd Show. I'm your host, Rebecca Nesbitt, and today we're going a little bit more personal than usual while maintaining the idea that we do need a bit of a strategy for everything because I do think both are important. So, this conversation really is for you if you're catching yourself asking, who am I? If you are not sure what you want, if you're questioning, what do I want? And also for you if you don't really know who you are outside of business or the roles that you play in your life. So, over the last few months, I've really been on this journey of rediscovering who I am. And I think this has happened many times with continued personal development. I don't think you can get away from it. It's something that I have progressively done. And I find that I get to these points where I know change is coming. So over time, I've learned to really listen to it and lean in, which sounds really fluffy. So, what do those things actually mean? Because we like clarity in our house. When I feel exhausted for no reason, I find less joy in the things that usually bring me excitement or light me up. Or I start to feel more frustrated, which, if you follow human design, is my non self theme. So, a little bit of a shout out if you're looking for any more information on human design. We have two CEO Crowd members that focus their businesses in and around human design. So, you can check out Maggie or Sheena. Their information will be in the details and in the description because I think they're really cool women to learn from. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think they're really awesome humans. And if human design is something you're interested in, go to them. I am not the guru. So, if I start to feel these ways, frustrated, exhausted, less joy, then I know that this means that change is coming. And instead of ignoring it and sitting in, those are particularly hard spaces. Like, no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be frustrated and joyless today. That's how I'd like to run my day. No one says that. So, it's a hard journey if I stay in that place, and I know that it's a hard journey if I start moving in the direction of what it is that is next. So, leaning in is this idea of I know that this will require a deeper version of myself to come to light. It will require of me to find probably a new support team. I need to listen to different people and really re-engage my mind. And I'm probably going to have to get a lot more vulnerable. So I lean in, meaning I go in search of the things that are very uncomfortable for me and are very difficult because I know that what I would be living would be difficult. So I may as well put a little bit of intention behind it and transform. So, this latest transformation has really been one of intuition. So, I thought I'd share a few ways to connect with your intuition because I think intuition is a buzzword that we don't understand. And I certainly didn't until this kind of latest, I'm going to call it transformation because it feels good. I didn't really understand that intuition really is the idea of listening to yourself instead of your conditioning. So, conditioning is something I've heard banded around the space for a really long time, but until this particular time, I don't think that I gave it as much weight as was required. I didn't realize, how deeply the conditioning runs within me and even within society, to be honest. So, example of conditioning is I have to show up for my community and be consistent with this weekly email, but I'm exhausted and need sleep. However, hustle culture tells me that I need to be consistent, don't slip up, work more, sleep less. That's the conditioning. But my intuition is saying you need rest and replenishment. And there's this like argument that goes on internally when you're not actually listening to what you need. It's almost this concept of disrespecting yourself for what you deem to be some kind of greater, I don't want to say greater good, but it's almost like this idea that I was always putting people before myself. And intuition is where you put yourself first. So it can be in the really simple moments, like I've just described, as well as bigger ones. Like I was speaking to a friend the other day who wants to move, but all their ducks kind of aren't in a row. And she's saying, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. but her intuition is really calling her now. So it's when you're being pulled towards something and you're ignoring it. And I'm not saying this is accurate for her exact situation, but this is something I've seen in people. They have this idea, I want to do this thing, I want to make this really big transition. And the want is there, but the action is not there. And then they feel like they're stuck. They feel like they're not listening to themselves. Every day that they're not in that new place or in that new job or in search of that new life that they're looking for feels like they're dishonoring themselves. And that's where people find this lack of fulfillment, this stress, this drama that we essentially create because we're just not listening to our intuition. So this might seem really simple, this concept of, well, put yourself first. If you were in that situation, like, of course I would move. And it's very easy to say it when you're not in the situation. I'm just highlighting that. But how many times do you put others before yourself? And if the answer is a lot, despite your justifications, whether it's you're a parent, you're a very present partner, your firm relies on you, your business is all on you, despite your justifications, we're not arguing about that. What we're saying is, despite them, these practices and these ideas could really help you reconnect with yourself so that you don't lose yourself along the way. You don't lose yourself in pursuit of being a good person in other people's eyes. You actually find out who you are. So, here are a few of the things that I've picked up lately that I hope will help you. And the first way is asking myself, are you choosing yourself or the person that you need to be? I feel like need should be underlined. It is on, I have it on a board, so I see it all the time. And when I'm making a decision that is not necessarily an easy choice, like if someone said, "Hey, Rebecca, do you want homemade pizza for dinner?" Yes. The answer is always yes. I'm never going to question that. But if it's a decision like two events are happening at the same time, and what do you want to do? You have the opportunity to go to both. So this actually just happened to me. And I had an invitation from a client to go to an event in Austin. It was a live podcast recording. And I signed up for that event and I couldn't understand why I hadn't messaged her. She was traveling and things at the time. And I couldn't understand, like, why have I not messaged her to say, like, let's get excited about this event? And it's actually because I wasn't really that excited about the event. And I had signed up and I paid my money and all the things, and I still get the emails, and it's very kind of them to still send the emails when I didn't even go. But then I got an opportunity to go to a Taylor Swift listening party for the Tortured Poets department. And if you're a Swiftie, you'll understand. But not only that, in terms of like my absolute diehard fandom of Taylor Swift, it was from people at my CrossFit gym. And myself and my husband really joined the CrossFit gym to have more community in our local area. So it was a really great opportunity to connect with those people. They seem like the coolest people. And I just wanted to hang out with them a little bit more that was outside of a gym environment, because you get to say like two words to each other. And if you're me, after saying two words and lifting one thing, you're gassed and you don't want to speak to anyone because you're like, I'm dying. None of this is fun for me anymore. And I'm probably not going to be the best conversationalist. So I wanted to spend some time with these people outside of that kind of gym environment and really get to know them as friends, as opposed to just people I go to the gym with. And you can even see from like how much time I've given speaking about both of them. I really wanted to go to the Taylor Swift listening party, which was I was invited to way after the fact. And this question really helped me because I was like, am I choosing myself or the person I need to be? And the person that I perceive I need to be a lot of the time is this entrepreneur that's going to the live events, that's like rubbing shoulders with the people that have millions of followers on social media. But that's not actually what I wanted. And I understand for some people it totally is. That's the absolute right place for them. But for me, in that particular weekend, it just really wasn't. So that's really the first way that I've started to connect with my intuition, is when I have those decisions to make that just feel crunchy. They don't feel easy to make. It's not like a split second decision. They're ones that I kind of sit with and I don't really action, and that's very abnormal for me because I'm an action taker. If I don't take action, it's very confusing for me. And then I'm now starting to recognize, oh, this is the place for that question because the likelihood is that I'm choosing who I need to be over who I want to be. And it's been so interesting lately. My birthday is coming up at the time I'm recording this, and it will be past by the time that this is out. But my husband keeps asking me what I want to do for my birthday, and I just keep putting it off. And that's not like me. I'm someone that celebrates their birthday for the entire month. So I don't know what's going to happen on my birthday. By the time you listen to this, then you'll know. But um, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I don't feel mad about it. I just feel very chill about it, and that's the way that I wanna be. I don't actually want to make a decision because I feel like any decision that I'd be making is probably against myself, and something will come up on that day inevitably. My intuition will say, "That's the thing I want to do today," and I don't wanna make that decision before then, and that's cool because that's me choosing myself, not the person I need to be that has a plan, that always has a plan for their birthday, that is, satisfying their partner's need for certainty of what they're going to do literally tomorrow. Just doing me. Just doing me. That's the first way is, are you choosing yourself or the person that you need to be? And I think that this really brings to light a lot of conditioning, and it's hard. Like, I'm not saying this is an easy question. This is actually a very challenging question. So we're going to get a little bit more into questions, but this is really my guiding question right now for my personal life. My guiding question for my business is always, is this temple service? And if you've been here and you know what that is, then you're in the know. And if you haven't, then please like DM me temple service and I'll tell you the story. So to come back to, the first way was a very specific question. The second way is actually related to questions. It's journaling on new questions. So the quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you are willing to ask yourself. So we're doing a little bit of a deeper dive into questions, and this is typically why things like coaching and therapy, they work. It's not all the reasons why, because there are significant benefits to both of those things. But one of the greatest strengths that they have is that they ask you questions that you're not asking yourself. So if you ask on a consistent basis, why do I suck at everything? I mean, that's likely an unproductive conversation for you. Not for everyone. If done with like a heightened amount of awareness, and you're saying, like, for example, for me, let's talk about CrossFit, like, why do I suck at toes to bar? I still can't get that movement. And a lot of the time it was like, oh, it's my upper body strength. And now it's my kipping velocity. Like, there are genuine things that I can pick out of if I've used that language. It's not because I suck as a person, it's because it's at something. Then it can be productive. But most people are like, just why do I suck? And that's very personal. That's bringing it into your identity. And that's where people become their own self-fulfilling prophecies, and that's not valuable for you. So if you're asking yourself that quality of question, just imagine the quality of your life. Whereas if you're asking yourself different questions that actually are more in alignment with this kind of positive spin on things, looking at yourself as a whole person, not judging yourself, then it can be really transformational. So the way that I find these questions is in a multitude of ways. There is a book called And the Next Question Is, excellent read for coaches. It literally is just a book of questions. I would definitely recommend, if you're a coach, to have that in your back pocket, especially if you're just starting out, really useful. But typically I find these on a day-to-day basis. I don't just like whip out my question book and just pick one. It's usually through coaching programs that I'm a part of, because I like being a part of structured education. So I like to be engaged with group programs and community. Obviously, I have a community, but I like to keep that engagement for myself, because then I'm asking myself questions that are really in line with what I'm learning, which is really helpful. But out with those programs, something I like to do is I like to answer questions asked on podcasts that interest me, where they're not obviously asking me, they're asking their interview guests. But quite often myself and my husband will like pause and we'll ask each other the question, and it's always really interesting. We always find out a lot about each other, about ourselves, because they're just questions we wouldn't typically ask. And it's, again, it's kind of related when you're doing it in that podcast setting. It's really related to what you're learning. So that's really interesting. And then you can check, like, what do they say after what you've said to see if you're kind of in line. And then we get to debate after that if it was in line, if it wasn't, like what our reasoning is. And I just think the coolest thing about my husband, there are many cool things, his brain's just awesome. It's just awesome. So I love that like moment after we've both kind of answered the question, we get the question on the pod, or they get the question on the podcast and they answer it, and then we debate what we think on a deeper level. It's just very fascinating to me. So I am a dork for this information, like for this particular area of learning about yourself and asking yourself questions. I'm such a nerd for it. So excuse my excitement because it gets a little bit deep. But other places you can find prompts essentially for questions you can ask yourself is there are prompts at the bottom of a tarot book that I use. I will talk about that in a second. But essentially, they will tell you about the card and then they'll give you a question to answer at the bottom. And I love that. I just do that on the card that I've just pulled, and it always feels really in alignment. And other things are books. So I do have a book, it's actually behind me. Healing Through Words by Rupi Kaur is amazing for this. It is, if you're interested in poetry, then it's an excellent resource because it helps you to start to write your own poetry, but it asks you some really deep questions. And essentially, it takes you kind of on this journey from like hurt to healing, which is really cool. So it's quite structured in the way that the questions are asked. You're kind of building up. And I think that that's equally accurate for a lot of personal development books. If you ever read a personal development book and you're like, I'll answer the questions later, go back to that book and genuinely answer the questions. The great thing about all of the ways that I've mentioned, because I think you could Google journaling prompts for self-love, self-trust, self-care, business growth, you could Google all those things, but then they're kind of like that style of, and the next question is, which is you're just kind of given a list of questions. It's really nice when things are in alignment with what you're learning. I just learn better that way. So hot tip. And then after I have actually done the journaling practice, should I be writing it out by myself and I'm not answering questions with my husband in the car, then I'll always ask, like, was this a conditioned response? Did I write this for myself or was it for someone else? Because what I found in answering that extra kind of bonus question is a lot of the time I've found deeper conditioning within what I have shared. And it gets really sticky. Like, this is not easy. Like, this should genuinely feel really challenging when you're going through it, because we were at an event last night or a coaching call, should I say, and we were asked questions about body image. We're going into somatics and it's very interesting. And I was writing and I was like, I don't know if this is a conditioned response or if this is what I actually think. And I had kind of three answers for the one question. And I was like, I'm still working it out. And I will go back to it today, still trying to work it out because I'm not sure. Is this just the way that I think I should think? Or is this how I actually think? And that is your intuition, is what do you actually think? Like, what do you feel? What do you know? Sometimes that's really hard to access. So it requires of you deeper levels. So this was the second way. And now the third way, I've already mentioned tarot cards. So cards, whether oracle or tarot, I'm all about it. Whether you are spiritual or not, I want you to listen in because I want to point out that tarot started as a card game. And then it was given meaning by different spiritual teachers, and it's become what it's become today. So any card that you pull, much like the practice of astrology, is about interpretation. So whether you believe that there is universal support behind it, I totally do. Whether you do or you don't, it actually doesn't matter because this is a practice in listening to yourself. It's how you interpret the information that you have been given, whether it's by a card or whether it's by, a part of your astrological chart. It is about how you interpret that information. And this is a really great example, actually. Yesterday, I pulled a card. It was called Elf Stroke. So it is the equivalent to the Tower in tarot, if you know of If you know of tarot, this will make sense. If you don't, I'm gonna like give you the basics. So the Tower card essentially means there's going to be a loss of stability. It's going to be quite violent. There's going to be drastic change. No one really wants to pull the Tower card. And literally in my version of tarot that I study, then it literally says people really don't want this in a reading, which I totally understand. But I had a call yesterday evening, same calls I was speaking about a minute ago, where as part of the group program, the purpose is that it essentially deconditions your mind. It allows these structures to break down, and then you will become a different person because of it. So when I saw the Tower card, I wasn't nervous about it because I want those structures to fall down. I'm ready for the tower to fall down. I'm ready to fly out of the tower. The Tower card is literally two people jumping out of a tower, which is very violent and dramatic. But in this practice of looking for the interpretation that I was going to take from it, I wasn't going to take, oh my gosh, someone's going to like pass away or something terrible is going to happen or really bad things like no one can leave the house today. Like I have to sit with my husband all day. I'm terrified that he's going to die one day. And I mean, we all do, but that's something that I genuinely will have nightmares about. And every time he goes in the car, I'm like, drive safe. And that is genuinely, that's some of my biggest fears is that that will happen. So I could take that card and say, don't drive today. He went for lunch with a friend. And I remember there was a moment where my brain was like, maybe he shouldn't go on this lunch, which is absolutely ridiculous because you can't lead your life by the potential that something bad will happen because inevitably bad things are going to happen. So then you'll take, oh, I got this card and then this terrible thing happened to mean every time you see that card, a terrible thing happens and you'll become your own self-fulfilling prophecy. So instead, I looked at the card and I was like, the interpretation of this card in my very real life is not drama, violence, terrible things, loss are going to happen. Those things will inevitably happen in my life at some point. What I'm going to take this particular card to mean is these systems are dismantling. There is a crumbling, and that's a good thing. And I think it makes cards more powerful when you do them for yourself and you do them regularly because you can develop this relationship with that particular deck of cards and with your intuition, which is really the main point. So it's about how you perceive something, how are you interpreting something? And then inevitably, like I said, things will come up. Like I did have that moment of thinking my husband was going to die in a car accident. I did have that moment. And then I thought to myself, I mean, it's unlikely. It's possible, but it's unlikely. So let's remember to live our lives and that that's safe and that that's okay. What else does this card really mean? And that's really how I connect with my intuition. So, three ways of doing that. Asking myself, are you choosing yourself or the person that you need to be has been so powerful. I can't even. Journaling on new questions or just asking yourself new questions. And if you have a partner in your life or a friend that you can kind of ask these questions with, that you can have those moments in the car with the podcast, then absolutely do that. It is so great for your relationship depth and it's so much fun. And the other thing that I do is I love cards. I love me some cards, my friends. If it's your thing, then you'll be all about this. If it's not your thing, that's totally cool, but it is genuinely a practice in your own intuition and whether you want to take it deeper than that on this kind of universal consciousness level, whatever you may deem that to be, then that's cool too. So that is a little strategy behind intuition, a little bit more about me and my personal life. And if conversations like this are your jam, like this is what you live for, then 100% I'm going to invite you to come to the next CEO Crowd networking event. It is such a blessing and a gift to get in the room with female entrepreneurs that work online that understand what this space is like and that also want to create deep connection. I think that's what this conversation has been. It's been deeper connection. And this is something that we do as a part of our membership in our CEO coffee dates. We have a little bit of training, and then we ask some really profound questions to really help you and guide you along the journey so that you can learn a little bit more about yourself and about the people that you're in community with, instead of just kind of telling you a question, telling you to write it down, and then maybe like two or three people share and everyone else shares in the comments. We actually put you in rooms with genuine people so that you can experience that, which I love. But if you want to experience what the CEO crowd really is before you get into the membership, I completely understand. Investments are really important. Make them wisely. Then please come to our CEO crowd networking event. I will drop the link in the description alongside the information that you can use to find Sheena and Maggie if you are interested in human design. And until next week, my friends, we will be over here at the CEO crowd, believing in you.